Hello, everybody. Hey, and welcome to another adventure in history. Hope that you are all doing very well. Uh, what's up, Green Herring? Good to see you. I am wrapping up the semester. I've got one more day before Christmas break, and oh boy, is it going to be lovely. 2 weeks where I don't have to do anything. Britain, and what the Britons? You all are. I purposely did not choose to make a Monty Python joke as the title for the stream tonight because I figured that would be considered a bit low-hanging fruit. So I tried to go with something a little bit, a little British, but not overtly British. You kind of have to know, but you know when you get it. Anyway, yeah, but we're going to talk about Britain, indeed. Specifically, this big island right here, Great Britain. We'll mention this over here. This island is part of the British Isles, and we'll talk about Ireland a little bit tonight. Specifically, their influence over Britain, religiously speaking. But welcome in. Hope everybody's doing okay. Viper's good to see you. I didn't say actually hello. I just read your message and then assumed you understood that I meant hello from that. But hi. Yeah. So the show is Adventures in History. We talk about stuff. We goof off. We have a good time. We make really bad puns and dad jokes and try to skirt as close as we can to the PG-13 line without going over it. Yeah, so that's kind of what we do here. Yeah. Pretty excited that I get off for 2 weeks after tomorrow. That's really nice. I'm very, very excited about that. If I worked at any of the other colleges in the state, I'd have 3 weeks off, though, just as a note. Happy with the two. Happy with the two. All right. Yeah. So how are you all? How's everybody? How's things and stuff? I've actually been looking into Irish mythology, and I wondered if the significance of threeness made the culture susceptible to Christianity. So you're talking about the old, like maiden, mother, and crone of the fates or the witches or Hecate or whatever you want to call her, the Morgan, yeah. That's a pretty broadly explored concept in a lot of what we might call academic mythological analysis of Ireland. The ease at which other figures also sort of slide right into Christianity, like Saint Bridget, right? Bridget is clearly a mythological figure that came from Celtic mythology that they just sort of like, oh, no, real person, totally Christian, and we're just going to make her a saint. You know, there's quite a bit of that going on. There are a lot of people that have made that same point, so you are on to something. And a lot of fairly well reputable.
I'm Spartacus!
Can you be a saint?
I'm Spartacus!
Sure, why not?
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
JMR, thank you for being Spartacus. I'm trying to type Spartacus in the chat, but it just being a pain in the butt. JMR, thank you so much for that subscription. 14 months. Very much appreciated, my friend.
I'm Spartacus!
And here we're going to get the repeat of that. I'll just cut it off for the moment. I still don't know why Streamlabs is doing that. I told my wife prior to coming on stream that I need to spend probably like half of a day over the break just trying to fix things on stream because things are what I would consider suboptimal, and it's starting to bother me. Being Spartacus is better than a saint. Spartacus got crucified. Not all saints did. So, potentially. I mean, some saints got it arguably worse than crucifixion, right? Like, do you want to be flayed alive? Do you want to be cooked on a giant grill? I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. It depends. Some of the saints get off pretty easy. They just die of old age, but some of them get for real tortured. um, Eaten by lions, yeah, yeah. Uh, Lots of fun ways that saints go out. But anyway, upside down crucified, yeah. Uh, Only church tradition talks about that, which is kind of interesting, and not even all church tradition mentions that. The upside down crucifixion of Peter. Interesting stuff that comes out of the Western tradition, if we'll say that for the least. But, you know, interesting stuff. Anyway, so, yeah, we could talk about Britain, which is, of course, this island right there. And if you've been around the show for a while, and you kind of know how we've done things, we haven't really talked very much about Britain. It's been a long time. It's been since the 400s that we've talked about Britain. So, you know, it's been almost, well, I mean, constructively speaking, it's been about 3 centuries since we've had a substantial conversation about what's going on over in Britain. And there's a reason for that. If that is what becoming a saint entails, I'd rather live on top of a pillar. Well, you could live on top of a pillar and become a saint, which is of course the joke. Like Saint Simeon Stylites. I could talk about multiple saints who become saints living on top of a pillar. Yeah, I've been to a lot of those locations. A lot of the Stylite locations. That's sort of what I did when I was in Turkey this summer. I looked at a lot of Stylite locations. So anyway, we can talk about that more later on if you want. But living on top of a pillar would be pretty cool, but you feel bathroom situation would be awkward. Yeah, it kind of is, and you sort of just kind of go off the side. And I mean, everybody knows that the stuff around the base of the pillar is kind of yours. Usually, if you are one of the larger saints, or not, I mean, you're not going to be living saint, but if you're one of the larger attractions, you kind of have some disciples that clean up around the base of your pillar. Some of these actually turned into money-making situations. You can see entire little church communities that set up kind of quasi-cities around some of these pillars that, you know, people chose because they're out in the middle of the desert, or they're out in the middle of nothing, or some old Roman ruined city, and they're like, I'm just going to go live up there. And then you sort of see the city revive because they're places of, you know, pilgrimage, and people are going to bring their money, and they're going to want to be blessed, and they're going to want to, you know, stay for a while. So open up a village inn right next door to the tower where the weird dude lives, and you can make some money off of that. You can make some money off of that. Even better if you get that person sort of in league with you. But that's a whole other story. I could talk about that for way too long. We're being visited by the puppy. You want to come and see me? You come up here. Is this your annual or your per stream visit? Well, come on. Well, come on. Come on. Come on. You can get up here. There's the puppy. Oh, hello. Hello. What are you doing? Just giving me sugars. Oh, the puppy sugars. Oh, my goodness. There you go. Some hitching from the human. That's all she wanted. Just to give up here and give me some sugars and go back around. Yeah. What's up, KP? These days, Simeon Stylites would just have an OnlyFans. Ooh. Ooh. I don't know about that. Times were weird back before the internet. Yeah, they kind of were. Is that really something you want me to do? I mean, I guess I said that I would do it if you wanted to. Okay, so very briefly, one of the things that happened today was just absolutely ridiculous. Um, all week, uh, President Trump has been teasing on Truth Social that he had a big announcement to be made today. And the big announcement was that he had commissioned an artist to make trading cards of him, basically as superheroes. But they're not actually physical trading cards. They're all NFTs. Um, and I brought this up in the mod chat, and uh, just as a goof off, I typed this little quote about his NFTs that KP said that he wanted me to read on stream as Donald Trump, doing the Donald Trump impersonation. So I told him that I would if he reminded me. So this is Donald Trump talking about the launch of his NFTs. I'm going to have to open this up and get it a little bit bigger text. Can I open that in Messenger? View in Messenger. See all in Messenger. Yeah. Okay. So this is him. This is fake, by the way. I just made this up. But this is Trump talking about his tokens. I make the best tokens, the best. Some people said, Donald, you should make those tokens fungible. But I said, no, non-fungible only. America doesn't want tokens that are fungible. Who wants fungible? I didn't listen to them, and I can promise you that my tokens are 100% made in the USA, completely non-fungible. So, there you go, KP. Hope you appreciated that one. Infernal, how's it going? You came in at a good time. There's a series of trading cards called Top Trumps here in the UK. Alas, that's interesting. Eric Kripke commented on it on Twitter. You linked it in the Discord. And I'm doing okay. I've got one more day before I'm off for Christmas break, which is good stuff. Grifter gonna grift, indeed. Raveland, what's up? Good to see you. Non-fungible tokens. Who wants fungible tokens? I thought it was pretty funny, but apparently KP dug it a lot more. Anyway, we could also talk about history stuff. So let's let's do that. All right. Anyway, we haven't talked for a while. Fungible means able to be turned into something else. Very basically. So you can take a dollar bill, which is fungible, and you can turn it into something else, like by buying something. Anyway, splittable, yeah, that works too. You can't, anyway. It's an NFT. It's some of this blockchain nonsense that people have been making up to make a lot of money off of people that are suckers. But NFT stands for non-fungible token, which means that it can't be turned into anything else. It's a unique, one-of-a-kind thing that you possess, but it's also not a real thing. No, it has not snowed here, and probably will not, Raveland. I did see the pictures of your snow, and I'm jealous of that. It doesn't snow in my world.
I'm Spartacus.
Metrand, what's up?
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. Metrand, good to see you. I hope things are going well in your world. I know that you've got a lot of stuff going on in university and all of that stuff, so I appreciate that you took some time to stay up really late and come hang out in the adventure. You'd send me some snow if you could. I would take it if you could. let Metrian tell you about snow. I'm pretty sure that Metrian has more snow than all of us, if I had to guess. And of course, my wife is like, nope, you can keep your snow. My wife does not care for the cold weather at all. Anyway, Britain. We haven't talked about it in a while. Why haven't we talked about it in a while? Well, there's a reason. Things there went really bad after the collapse of Rome. The last emperor that had any sort of power in Britain was this guy, whose name is Honorius. He basically abandoned Rome in 410. Now, if you've been keeping up, you'll know that's 66 years before Western Rome collapsed. So even as Rome was still technically claiming to be Rome, they were still losing territory. And they effectively evacuated all of the legions out of Britain in 410. What happens after that? Well, it's kind of hard to say. I'd love to give away all the snow, got ice in your mustache every time I'm outside for more than a few minutes. Now that's cold. That's pretty cold. That's pretty cold. So the Romans lose the ability to project power into Britain. This is because, of course, all of the invasions and all of the problems. You can go back and, do reruns of shows if you want to. But in 410, from 410 to 477, we go into this weird period of time that historians have started calling sub-Roman Britain. Sub-Roman Britain, like Roman, the Britain that's after the Romans is what we're trying to get at here. Self-made popsicles, yeah. You went inside and it melted and you thought you were bleeding. It's negative 16C. Holy crow, that's pretty cold. That's pretty cold. Pretty cold. So sub-Roman Britain. This runs from the year 410 to the year 577, and we'll talk about why that 577 is important in just a second. But what's going on in this sub-Roman Britain? We don't really know that much. We do have a couple of sources that talk about this stuff a little bit. One of them is the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. The thing about the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle is that it's not written even in the first earliest drafts until about the 800s, the early 800s. It's probably finalized in the 1100s, like the 1150s. So the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle is at least 400 years after this, and probably substantially older than this, maybe even 500 or 600 years older than the events that are happening in sub-Roman Britain. So in the ancient world, learning stuff that far back in time is not easy, right? It's not easy at all. So we have to sort of take the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle with an appropriate sized grain of salt, because it's this far back, it's not completely accurate. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of people that we really don't know, like whether or not they are who the Chronicle says that they are, whether or not they were actually kings, or maybe they were just kind of like warlords, or maybe they were just big leaders of a city or something like that. We don't know. It's a lot of fuzzy stuff. We also have this guy named Venerable Bede. And Bede was a British historian. He is sometimes referred to as the father of English history. Bede lived from 673 to 735. So he's closer to the time period contemporarily, right? He's only a couple hundred years after some of this stuff. But there's an issue with him too. He was from one of the kingdoms that we'll talk about in a little bit, named Northumbria. and he was very clearly super pro Northumbria. Venerable Bede, it's actually spelled Bede. But it does sound very much like a Harry Potter character, and I would suspect that the the story, I can't remember what the little book was that had the story of the three brothers in it that talked about the Deathly Hallows. I can't remember what the name of that book is in the Harry Potter world. But I suspect that that book has some application or some influence, and I don't know this for sure because I haven't read so much into the actual Beetle Bard. Yeah. Beetle the Bard. I think Beetle is Bede, but that's just my speculation. I don't know that for sure. I don't know if J.K. was making that particular connection or not, but it wouldn't surprise me if she did. Because she knows quite a bit of history of England. So maybe, but that's just me spitballing. I don't know if that's accurate or not. Anyway, so Bede was incredibly biased to Northumbria. And what that means is all of the stuff that he writes about the other kingdoms is speculative because we can't necessarily take it at its face because he was a Northumbrian. And when he talks about Mercia especially, it's like, duh, he's calling them horrible things and writing these scathing reviews of their kings and these horrible people that do horrible stuff to their population, and they're just bad Christians and they're still holding on to pagan traditions and they're causing the end of the world and blah 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 blah. Right? So the the chronicle that Bede writes is a very important piece of history, and it does give us a lot of information that we don't have anywhere else. But what's really important here is the most reliable sources that we have from this period of time are archaeological. And I don't say that because this plays into my wheelhouse. You all know that I love reading ancient texts. The father of Yelp, yeah, 1 star, do not recommend. Sussex, no. Wessex, no. East Anglia, okay, fine. We don't really like it, but 2 stars, fine. Anyway, this will all make more sense a little bit later on. So, what does archaeology tell us about sub-Roman Britain? Classic Northumbrian, right? Oh, those people up by Lindisfarne, who are they to say anything about anybody else? York, who cares about York, right? I hope everybody has an encyclopedic knowledge of all of the little areas of England where all of the cities are, because if not, none of this stuff is making any sense. Animal Chin, are you from Britain, or do you just know, or are you just sort of like throwing that out there as like that's Northumbrian, or maybe you just know a lot about British history? I'm not sure. Anyway, what does archaeology tell us? Oh, you're from Suffolk. There we go. Bad luck for Britain in the World Cup, or England rather. I was really surprised that Harry Kane missed that penalty shot. Very, very surprised. Very surprised. That if you look at the teams that are still left, I think England would have beaten Argentina or Croatia. I really do. So I feel like if England had beaten France, they would have probably won it all. But man, that was a tough miss. And you know that's just got to be sitting on him. Anyway, Lumpy manifests in the room as an arch stress elemental. You're used to it, but I mean, put it to you this way: Gareth Southgate has done an amazing job with the English national team. Really, really has, to the point where, like, you can kind of expect them to win now. It wasn't something that you could probably do even like 4 years ago or 5 years ago. You couldn't necessarily expect them to win. He's a class act. I like Southgate a lot. That guy is really good. Sports ball. It's World Cup time. Did you all know that it's World Cup time? Would you like to hear about the World Cup? I could talk about the World Cup. Oh man, do I love the World Cup. looking forward to the third place game in the final this weekend. If Argentina plays like Argentina played against Croatia, France is going to have their hands full. And if France plays the way that they played against Tunisia, Argentina is going to beat them. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be a good game. I hope it doesn't go down to PKs. I hope somebody wins in actual time. I don't like PKs. I think that's the worst way to win a game. Anyway, what does archaeology tell us about the sub-Roman period? Let me say this for the fourth time. Cities depopulate. We can look at the number of active sites inside of cities, and we know that after 410, cities are going to shrink in size dramatically. Some cities that are on the medium to low end of the scale just disappear. There's even some signs that there is a move back to semi-nomadism for some of the people. And again, this is just another example of how we sort of expect that once you hit big cities, the big cities are always around, but they're not, right? I've said this many times on stream that civilization is kind of a fragile thing, right? And in England, it happened. It just got really messed up. We know that the Roman villa system, the villas, of course, are like these big houses that are out on large farms that make a lot of money. Those completely collapse as a system. A lot of those are completely abandoned. Some of them are destroyed, burned down. So, people looking for the wealth inside of them are going to, round up the people and do whatever they want to. And you start noticing a shift specifically in graves. And this is how you can sort of see what happens socially speaking. There is a pretty big breakdown of the social order. And if you look at the graves of people that we today would sort of classify as rich, so these are people that had expensive or luxury items in the grave with them, right? So grave goods, or people that had really big tombs, specifically here burial mounds. The tumuli that are getting built during this time are going to see a shift, and you start seeing more rich burials that are not following what we would consider sort of Roman custom, right? When you dig up a burial, the Romans buried people in a certain way, and you start seeing people being buried that way less. You start seeing them being buried more. You start seeing Celtic stuff come back around. There's a sort of a broad de-Christianization of a lot of England during this period. That's not so much happening in Ireland, but that is happening a lot, especially in the central and southern part of the island of Great Britain. There's a big de-Christianization. It sounds a lot like post-Brexit Britain. That's actually a really interesting concept. I would love to compare after we get a little bit more distance. I don't know if we've got enough distance from the Brexit event to necessarily get enough comparable data. But it would be really interesting to look at things, archaeologically speaking, in sub-Roman Britain and compare those to post-Brexit England. That would be really fascinating, actually. That would be a really good sociology paper or a historical dissertation if you're trying to get a PhD, or a political science one even. Anyway, I'm now spinning off ideas in my head of things that I'll never actually write. But there's a lot more barbarian kind of stuff going on here. And we know that there is a pretty broad fracturing of any sort of political hierarchy. And England basically falls apart. So what do I mean when I say that? There's a lot of people that start setting up a lot of different areas of attempted political centrality. And England, instead of being, broadly 2 or 3 regions, turns into about 16 or 17 or even 18 different little regions. And one of the reasons why I didn't cover this in more detail in the 500s, you can see here that this is Britain around the year 540. The reason we didn't cover this as an independent lesson or stream, when we were doing things like the French in the 500s or the Goths in the 500s, is because there's not really any one way to cover Britain during the 500s. You sort of just have to show this image and go, things were crazy. There's also a whole bunch of migration stuff going on here. And you can see here that up at the top, we have these new people coming in. These Angles, Britons are just Britons. You see Jutes and you see Saxons. The Picts had sort of been around for a while, and they're mostly just up here in the north. But you see how these people groups start spreading around. You've got Saxons, you've got Angles, you've got Britons, you've still got some original Celtic people over here in what is Wales today. There's just a lot of different people. And what this does is sort of makes it really hard for us to know exactly what's going on. Like, we don't know how big these kingdoms were or if they were even really kingdoms. Again, some of this stuff is kind of like tribal semi-nomadism again, where people are kind of roving around trying to figure out where to stay, where to live, and how to live. These people are coming from the mainland of Europe. Specifically, they're coming from places like over here in Spain. Some of the people from here end up over on this part of England. Oh, can you even see that? Let me see. Nope. So this region up here, Galicia, we talked about that the other day, or last week. Some of those end up over here. Some of the northern Germanic peoples, if you recall us when we were doing the history of the Germanic peoples, there were sort of sea Germans, or Germans that were, going to build boats. The Angles and the Saxons, they end up over here. So there's a lot of motion into England, and what that does is destabilizes the entire region and makes it really, really hard for us to know what's going on. Because without cities, without stable populations that are going to stay in the same place for a long time, they're not even really leaving behind a lot of good archaeological stuff. We get burials, and we get camps, and we get historical written sources that come from later on, and it's just really hard to say exactly what's happening. We know that there were probably lots of wars going on. We have a whole bunch of descriptions of fighting going on between these people, and we have rich burials of people that were buried in armor, specifically this guy. You might have heard of this particular famous burial. This is the helmet from a place called Sutton Hoo. This was a Saxon burial from around this particular period of time in the 500s. And this was that is in Suffolk, yeah. Not too far from, well, it depends on where you live. Probably not longer than about 30 minutes drive. The Tea War of 435, the Scone War of 515, not that kind of small wars. But Sutton Hoo is an example of, again, these sort of new rich burials. This helmet is not a Roman helmet. The Romans had been deplaced by the incoming Saxons. And you start seeing this happen a lot more frequently. These big rich burials don't look Roman anymore. They are also fewer, right? So if you look at the number of rich burials under the Roman period, there were just more rich people there. If you look at what happened after they collapsed and we enter sub-Roman Britain, things sort of spread out. Now, it might sound like there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here, but again, we don't really know exactly what's going on. And this is why it's so easy to start making myths from this period, because we don't have firm dates for a lot of this stuff. We don't have a lot of physical remains for a lot of these people. And what this ends up doing is giving us this guy. This is a very early depiction of King Arthur. So, if you've ever seen King Arthur or heard of Sword in the Stone or watched any of the various quality movies made about Arthur, you'll probably know who this person is. The oldest versions of stories about Arthur are going to come from this period of time. And one of the reasons why it is so hard to try to nail down exactly who this guy was is, again, because we don't know very much of anything about this period of time. Do we know what the art on the Sutton Hoo helmet depicts? There are, like, on the helmet itself, I'm sure that we do. I'll be completely honest and say that I haven't studied it enough to know what the images are. I'll just be honest and say I don't know. I know that there were some other things that had horses. I don't think that might have been on the helmet, but I don't think that it was. I think that was maybe on one of the, like a scabbard of a dagger or a sword. And I know that one of them was maybe like a serpent, but I don't know enough to say for sure. I should probably stop talking. I'm getting off into areas where I'm not very firm on the material. I know that they recently did a whole bunch of scanning of these things, and I think that there is a 3D scan of the Sutton Hoo helmet that you can look at online. The helmet replica of what it probably looked like looks amazing. Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. It's really cool stuff. I'm pretty interested. He totally copied the Swedish three crown signal. Yeah, so Arthur is a Swede. Well, one of the things could be that he's one of these invaders, right? He's a king from one of the invading groups, and one of them, the Jutes, were from kind of the larger sort of northern European, quasi-Scandinavian area. If you know where Jutland is, right? That's land of the Jutes. So maybe, but probably not. A lot of the stuff that we have about Arthur is just completely impossible to say. There's a grave site that's attributed to him. There are actually multiple grave sites that are attributed to him. We don't really know anything about who this guy was, which is why there's so many people that get so excited, like, we found King Arthur, and he's all wrapped up in the Holy Grail stuff and the Knights Templar stuff and yada yada yada. It's easy to come up with myths from this period of time because, again, we don't have a lot of actual evidence. Maybe he was a Transformer. I know that he was in one of the Transformer movies, but I didn't watch that one because I was done with them after the second one when Devastator had testicles. I had to stop watching there. Arthur has a famous table, IKEA much? Yeah, exactly, right? And it's, the first one that decided to be round, like, whatever. Anyway, why is 577 here listed as such a big deal? Well, the Roman heritage Britons had apparently tried to hang on for as long as they could, but the Saxons are going to start really putting the stick to them. And there are several really big battles that are attested to have happened during this period. And one of the big ones that is supposedly the kind of the end of Roman Britain is this one called the Battle of Durham, which happens in 577. And this is where, at that point, the King of Wessex is going to defeat one of the last kings of the Britons and supposedly subjugates the Britons and brings them under Saxon rule. Now, this Saxon period starts in 577, and it's going to have a pretty good run because it runs all the way up for about 500 years until the Normans shows up. Well, I guess you can say that they've got sort of interrupted by the Danes, but that's a whole other story that we'll talk about later. Well, not later here, but like in a later stream. But sub-Roman Britain is pretty much gone by 577, and we end up with Saxon rule in Britain. Are there many scans of artifacts out there? Not as many as there should be, Vipers. I'm a big fan of using 3D imaging and laser scanning for artifacts. I'm also a really big fan of publishing those for free so that the world can access them. I think that is a perfectly good way to make items available for people and then send those back where they're supposed to be, right? Like if you want to make a replica of the Elgin marbles, laser scan that junk and then 3D print them and, you know, make them look like marble and put them up there, and most people won't know the difference. And then send that junk back to Greece where it's supposed to be. Especially smaller items that have really big impacts on cultural heritage and stuff like that. Like, you know, some of the Benin bronzes, you know, they're only about yay big, right? And you could make almost identical copies of those and then send the originals back to Benin. And with laser scans and 3D printing technology, you could make an exact copy of that down to nicks and scratches on the item. So there's no reason to say, oh, well, if we send these back, we won't be able to study them anymore. That's bullcrap, right? We have technology now that would allow us to replicate these things down to the micron. There's no reason we can't send that back. But that's just me being my radical self again. I get run out of discussions when I start talking about stuff like this. But, you know, that's me being... and what did we call it yesterday? Some version of academic when we were talking in Noger stream last night. Was it abrasive? Annoying? Anyway. If you wanted, you could throw together a little 3D viewer app that would allow you to load models into it. It'd only take me an hour or two. Insufferable. Yeah, I'm an insufferable academic. I would want to talk with you about exactly what you mean there before I said yes, go ahead and start working on stuff. But we'll talk about that. We'll make a little note of all the things that we're going to talk about, like talk about video games and talk about 3D viewer app and stuff like that. Maybe this weekend when I get on, but that's a bit more of an involved discussion. But Saxon England, we're there. The Saxons have taken over, and one of the things that happens when the Saxons take over is that they start consolidating things. So if we look at a map from around the year 600, we can see that Saxons here in blue have basically merged with the Angles, and now they have made themselves the power bases of England. There are fewer places overall, right? There are fewer individual kingdoms, so we're starting to move a little bit more towards what we might consider consolidation. But we're definitely moving towards what we might consider to be sort of a cultural consolidation under this new Anglo-Saxon union of culture. They should have merged with the Britons and become the Bengals. Maybe so. But walking like an Egyptian would probably have confused things. Yeah, I would think that if we dug up Egyptian artifacts in England from that time, well, today the British Museum would just go, look, we have historical precedent now of holding on to Egyptian stuff, so we're not going to ever give it back. But it would probably give some archaeologists kind of a good head scratcher. I will say that when I was a young kid, I had a mad crush on the lead singer of the Bengals. And there's this moment in the music video for Walk Like an Egyptian where she sort of like looks around at different people in the crowd. And man, I was like, I should date her. And I was like a kid, like a little kid, right? But I thought she was pretty hot. Anyway, Susan, Susanna Haas. Okay. Moose 2271. I don't think I said hello to you, but hello, good to see you. Um, yep. So there we go. Now, I said that we would talk a little bit about Ireland, and this is sort of where Ireland comes back into the picture. Because when the Saxons and the Angles take over, there's going to be some attempts that start in the late 500s to kind of re-Christianize them. The Angles and the Saxons were both Germanic, and they practiced traditional polytheistic Saxon and Germanic mythology or religions, so they're worshiping Germanic polytheistic gods and things like that. But there was this real big interest in re-Christianizing this area. And they're going to get emphasis from sort of two different angles. And down here in the southern part of England, especially that closest, here to the continent of Europe, there's going to be some missionary work done by Pope Gregory. In the 590s, he sends a guy named Augustine up here, not that Augustine, to do some missionary work. And also, up here in the northern part and over here on the western part of England, Irish missionaries start coming over sort of independently and kind of unilaterally over to the parts of England that are over on that side. So you sort of have this double approach at re-Christianizing the island. Hey, Eviscera, good to see you. You could tell me a lot about this. Feel free. We're going to kind of hit the wave tops, but we're not necessarily going to deep dive into this because it gets kind of messy and it gets a lot of church politicky. And I've discovered that while I sort of adore the minutia of church politicking, that's not really something that everybody else digs. I could have done an entire stream on the Council of Nicaea and just gone through all of the different little canon law that they tried to pass and explain why they did this and why they did that. But I don't think most people get that far into the weeds. Lumpy, did I say hello to you? Hello, Lumpy. If I didn't say hello to you, I apologize. I just realized that I don't know if I said hello to you. Anyway, so we start seeing Christians move around more in Britain. And specifically, what these people are going to target are the kings of these different little kingdoms. Would love a stream about the Council of Nicaea. Oh, I mean, if everybody wants to dig into it, we could absolutely throw that into like a viewer request stream. I would be totally that. Coming apart at the seams, but the finish line is in sight. Weekend is just a day away, my friend. Just a day away. Are you going to stream this weekend? Well, I guess if you're falling apart, perhaps, maybe not. You should go follow Lumpy anyway, because the next time he streams, you're going to want to be there. Lumpy was in my top 4 streamers for the year. You need to effing relax. I feel that. And Fernal is also in the room, and I would have probably been, she would have probably been in my top 4 streamers if I stayed up later. I have been very tired this year, and I have not been staying up as late as I usually do. I don't know if that's me getting old. I know some of it is COVID related, and we're being visited by the puppy again. So go follow these great streamers because you'll want to hang out in their room. They're both smart people, and you can have a lot of fun in there. Good conversation as always. Anyway, so Christianization, and we're going to target the kings because here's the thing: if you can convert the king and get the king baptized, then theoretically the king will then tell everybody else, well, you've got to be Christian too. Now, were they Christian? That's a different question. Did they say they were Christian? Yes. Were they Christian? Kind of. The first big one that we have on record is this guy named Ethelbert. It's almost like Ethelbert. And he's one of the kings of Kent. He gets baptized in 601. Put the king in water and wait overnight. Yeah, it's like steeping a tea bag. Like you just dip them in the water and you leave them there for a little while, and then it sort of permeates into everything else, right? Um, what ends up happening though is the influence here from Ireland is going to get a lot of the people over in this region sort of looking to Ireland as their kind of their religious lead. But then you have other people over here, especially down in this corner, that are going to look to Rome as their religious leader. And this causes a lot of conflict because while Ireland was in communion with the larger Roman Church, they were always just a little bit their own flavor. Even today, Irish Catholics still have just a little bit of their own local flavor. And a lot of that stuff didn't sit very well with the popes at the time, and especially with the coming of these new kingdoms into the or back into the Christian fold. Rome wants to be influential in these areas because it's going to stand to benefit quite a bit from, new parishioners, new archbishops, exerting political control over new kings, etc. Difference in religious causing conflict? Never heard that one before. Nah. This is the first time it ever happened. Uh, ever. So there's a lot of like back and forth here between the Irish and the people living on the island of Great Britain and Rome. Let's see what Vipers has to say here. St. Comgall, one of Patrick's proteges, built a monastery near Bangor, right? Derived from Benacor, horned curve the shape of Bangor Bay because he had a vision where he was instructed to do so by angels. Very cool. At a place named the Vale of Angels. Well, that would be where you would go to see angels, right? There was a saying in the Middle Ages that if you meet a learned man on the road, he is sure to be from Bangor. Well, that's cool, right? Because one of the things that came back into England during this period of time was actually learning, and the Irish had a big play in this. The Saxons and the Angles, and even to a certain larger extent, the Britons, or certain smaller extent rather, were not people of letters. They really didn't have a lot of books. They were still sort of an oral tradition kind of culture. And when the Irish were bringing over Christianity, they were also bringing over, here's how you write again. Here's how you, like, they brought Latin back to England. Like, here's the language of the church, and here's how to copy a book. And a lot of the Irish monasteries and churches funded a lot of scriptoria to be created over in England, right? So it's not just we're bringing Christianity back. In a certain extent, it's also we're bringing learning back, which is sort of the root of that whole if you meet a learned man on the road, he's sure to be from Bangor concept, because the Irish sort of, brought back some of that stuff to England. Bangor Abbey. Let's see what that is. Oh, that's pretty cool. Man, I'd love to go to Ireland. That'd be friggin' amazing. Ugh. Cool stuff. One day. Anyway, we're going to start converting. And Ethelbert of Kent is going to be one of the first big ones in 601. By the 670s, so not too long into this attempted reconversion, you're basically going to see the end of non-Christian kings. So the Anglo-Saxons had almost completely converted on the control level, right? Did that mean that the populations in these kingdoms were Christians? Absolutely not. The kings and the nobility were, because they saw this as a way to promote their power by becoming part of the larger Christian system that had at that point dominated the Western European continent. And they were doing this out of actual religious conviction, but also out of, I want somebody else that says that I'm in this position, and I can rely on the church to do that as long as I do what the church tells me. And there's benefit in that. There are always going to be gaps of time between when the leadership converts and the average person converts. And in England, at the island of Great Britain, this took a long time. A long time. And parts of the region were slower than others. So the northern part, up in what is modern day Scotland, and the furthest western part over here in what is modern day Wales, and then even down on this southernmost part of the peninsula here, it took a long time for the average person to be a Christian. Hundreds of years. It was a constantly growing kind of thing, and some of them were what you might call like quasi Christians, where yeah, sure, we go to church and we do the you know the the mass thing, but then on the big holidays like the solstices, we're going back out and also doing the stuff to the old gods. And when we say our marriage vows, we're totally not doing things in front of Jesus unless we're like the high nobles. If we're just the regular peasant folk, we're going to be saying our vows in front of the old gods. Right. So like Republicans, so they're going to go to church on Sunday and then go do whatever they want to during the rest of the week. That's a potential hot burn against the Republicans. I don't think that all of them are that way. They worship money. Ooh, I don't know if that's necessarily just a Republican issue. I think that's sort of a human thing, a human condition. I think that Congress right now in the United States argues over who gets to spend the money because nobody's really conservative anymore. It's just who gets to spend the money on their stuff. So I don't know if we can necessarily just pin that on one political party or not. But with the reintroduction of Christianity and a sort of re-homogenization of the population, we also start seeing movements towards new re-centralized kingdoms. And we start seeing people that are going to have more firm boundaries. And we start seeing kings issue coins again. And this, by the way, is into the late 600s. Now, the coinage issue itself is going to sort of start down here in the southeast and move sort of broadly up this way and sort of broadly here into this region. Coinage had not really been seen during this period of time. After Romans left, nobody was making coins because they didn't have centralized governments that were big enough to recognize the value of these things. There wasn't a king that said this coin is legal tender, right? So when we start seeing coins show back up, this is a recognition that we are more centralizing. We're also going to start seeing some church stuff happening where kings are going to start donating money to have churches built on them. We're going to start seeing some attempts at regional councils where especially Christian bishops from all over Great Britain are going to try to meet together to talk about things or go to the ecumenical councils that are being called in Europe. So we start seeing this kind of like pull back together. So the story of the 500s is things fell all apart. And the story of the 600s is we're kind of moving back together. We have an interesting topic here. Now, if we go into what we might call, well, I don't even know how to say this, modern ancient history. If you look at the way that historians talked about this in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, people start using this term heptarchy. Heptarchy, which is the rule of the seven. Total aside, but I heard that in India they use bread in place of coinage. But I have a feeling you're going to tell me that it's a bunch of nonsense. That was rather clever. And because it is non, I will not rise to the occasion to make a pun back at you. But I will say that was a good joke. Anyway, the heptarchy. For a long time, in uh, in history, when we talk about like history being written about this period, you see this word heptarchy. And we even have these maps like, look, it's the heptarchy. There are 7 kingdoms, the 7 big kingdoms. Here's the thing, though. We don't really use this term anymore, and there's a reason for it. When this was being popularized, we did not have nearly as much archaeological evidence as we do now. The island of Great Britain has an amazing amount of archaeological stuff happening on it at basically any given point. You can only think about Game of Thrones, right? The kingdoms, yeah. Uh, that's based on a lot of the same kind of stuff, right? This idea of all of these different kingdoms fighting for the control of everything. Of course, that makes Scotland the king of the north. No, the king of beyond the wall. But the wall itself is just referencing Hadrian's wall. But that's a whole other thing. Anyway, that would be an interesting concept. No, I don't want to do that. Maybe as a challenge thing, or not as a challenge thing, but as a fundraiser thing or something like that. But like, my thought here, because you all can't read my mind, is where did Martin actually get all of his historical reference for to write Game of Thrones? He has openly talked about some of it, but it's pretty obvious where a lot of that stuff comes from. So that would be an interesting thing, but I probably would not really want to do that one without significant motivation. Mostly because I know we're never going to get those other books. And I kind of don't even really want to give Martin the credit. We're never going to see those other books. Well, I rephrase. He'll die, and then somebody else will finish writing the books, and they won't be as good. War of the Roses, Glencoe Massacre, yeah, that kind of stuff. A lot of that stuff is actually based on real historical event. Anyway, the people in the north. Well, now I'm just like trying to get it at you, like, hey, the old gods. The people in the north still worshiping the old gods. That's because people up in the north didn't Christianize as fast, right? But anyway, whole other stuff. Do we still say heptarchy? Not really. And there's a reason for that. And I was trying to explain that before I got sidetracked. Tangents are fine, by the way. I will do the tangents on my own if nobody else provides the tangents. So don't feel bad about asking a question that sends me off on some weird rambly tangent thing, because that's sort of like what we do around here, right? Anyway, we don't say heptarchy anymore because we know it's much more complicated than just 7 kingdoms. Archaeology has shown us that during this period of time, it's not just 7 kingdoms. There are still a lot of players in the game. And specifically here, what is happening is that we have a system of big kingdoms dominating small kingdoms. And while we might say, oh, this is the kingdom of Wessex, or the kingdom of Sussex, or Essex, and this is the kingdom of East Anglia, or Northumbria, or Mercia, it's not just Mercians that are ruling the territory that is claimed by Mercia, right? It might be Mercia, but there are also 3 other kings ruling in that region. Because what happened as these countries centralized is that they started bringing in smaller satellite nations as vassals. And that has not been as clearly shown until more recently in time. So the archaeology today, if you look specifically at things like coin circulation, if you look at things like whether or not we have written documentation of someone doing a certain thing in a certain location, if you look at burial customs, and if you look at even DNA evidence, because we're actually getting some really interesting DNA evidence, what we can see is it wasn't just 7 kingdoms. There was a lot of political wrangling going on at this time, and it seems like the historical sources gloss over a lot of this stuff because it was sort of constantly shifting, and you really only get the ones where people started shooting each other, right? when it comes time to fighting, we might get a footnote in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, or Bede might go, and Wessex rebelled against Mercia, or something like that. But we don't say heptarchy as much anymore because we know that the world was just way more convoluted than that now. So you still might see this if you're reading a book about British history. You might run into the word, which is why I wanted to bring it up, mostly just to sort of tear it down. But that's what we do in history. We say some things about some stuff, and then we go, nope, not anymore. Now, getting a little bit closer here to our period of time, because again, we are supposed to be talking about this in the frame of the 8th century, because that's our larger phase. We're talking about the 8th century right now. We've talked about France and Spain and Italy and the Byzantines and the Arabic Caliphate and all that stuff in the 8th century. Why now just talk about the 8th century in Britain? Well, we still don't know too much about what's going on in specific, but there's enough for us to do the catch-up and then talk about a couple of pretty powerful kings here, specifically kings of Mercia. Mercia was a central kingdom right about in here. I've got a map that I'll show you in just a second. But during the 8th century, we are going to enter a period of time that is basically going to be dominated by the kingdom of Mercia. And this is going to start in the late 600s, but it's really going to get sort of solidified in the 700s under a guy, and I can't type this for the life of me. Why can't I type in the blank? What is going on here? I don't like OBS sometimes. Oh, now we go. Ethelbald. Lord have mercy, indeed. Ethelbald. Sounds like a good name, good strong name, Ethelbald. Somewhere in the north right near the border is where your family came from. Oh, well, there we go. Ethelbald is this guy. You're like, that doesn't look very great. That's your real name. So Anne is just a nickname, and Ethelbald is your full name. Ethelbald Fernal. I guess I can see it. I mean, you do. I don't think you really look like an Ethelbald. Maybe an Ethelwolf. I'll give you Ethelwolf, but Ethelbald, nah, I don't really see that. So what is this thing that we're looking at? Okay, well, this is referred to as the Repton Stone. And this was a funerary monument, so placed at the spot of somebody, being dead. And it is suspected that this is King Ethelbald. He is wearing a crown. It's kind of hard to tell because, it's a messy looking thing, but here you can see around his head that he has a crown on, and he has a shield, and he has a sword, and he's riding a very skinny horse, very much not chonky. Minus points for not chonky horse, but anyway, he's wearing armor. Yeah, not a chonky horse. Very much not a chonky horse. So, but an anatomically correct one. Anyway, why do we think this is Ethelbald? Well, first off, we don't have a whole bunch of depictions of anybody from this time, of anybody. So this one being such a big deal and having such a large degree of work into it means that it's somebody that's pretty rich. The fact that he's wearing a crown and it's dated to this time period and it's from an area where Ethelbald would have ruled, that's a lot of circumstantial evidence that really points to that guy being Ethelbald. Are we sure it's not a donkey? No, it's a horse. Also, hey, next, good to see you. Horse needs more chonk. Yeah, feed that horse more food. Well, I mean, he's dead now, so I guess we can't. Do you think Michelangelo enjoyed painting the Sistine Chapel? I don't see why he wouldn't have. I mean, I'm sure that he had like days where it sucked, right? Like I'm sure that he, had crappy days, and he did threaten to quit a few times, um, mostly to extort more money. Um, but he didn't do all of the painting, right? He did not individually hand paint every single brush stroke on on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. He had supporters that did a lot of the sort of background work with him. Um, he did have to lie on a scaffold, uh, suspended a good 30 feet up in the air. Oh yeah, like the big Renaissance artists very rarely did all of the work themselves. Uh, Leonardo da Vinci did because he was stodgy and didn't like anybody else. But even like some of the big uh, sculptures that are attributed to Michelangelo, like the Pieta and David and stuff like that, he didn't do that completely by himself. He had help with a lot of that stuff. It's pretty common for the big people like Bernini and Donatello and all that stuff. Um,
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus. I'm
I'm
Spartacus. We're getting double Spartaci attack here. I don't know what's going on.
I'm Spartacus!
Hey, Chad guy. Thank you for subscribing and welcome back to being Spartacus. I don't think you understand his ceiling art. I think it just goes right over your head. That's a fair thing. Tuna, hello. I didn't say hello to you. Did I miss anybody else? I think I said hey to everybody else. Yeah, so Splinter was the real genius behind it all. Exactly. He's the one that brought together the dream team. I don't know if you all know this, but I'm
Spartacus!
Streamlabs is Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Chad guy, thank you for the gift sub, and I don't know how that managed to give that to Streamlabs. Okie dokie. Sounds good. Works, does its thing. Alrighty. So, what was I saying? I don't know if you all know, but I'm a gigantic fan of the Ninja Turtles, and I actually have right over here on the wall. You can see this thing is a print of the original Ninja Turtles back when they all had red face masks on, and it is signed by Kevin Eastman with a little picture of a turtle drawn on it right there. One of the coolest pieces of things that I have hanging on my walls. I like the Ninja Turtles a lot. So, a gift to the AI. Anyway, what did this guy do? So he's king, and we actually have some years for this guy. So he's king from 716 to 757. Just finished remodeling your master bathroom. Oh wow, that sounds like not fun. I am not a fan of doing housework. I always hurt myself. I'm careful, and I always try to do things the right way, and then I always end up hurting myself. Rocco's Basilisk will spare Chad Guy from an eternity of torture, because that's what we really have to worry about. Good Grace, finding a good bathroom vanity was a pain. I don't doubt it. Anything like that is sort of automatically not my deal. Red Letter Media just did an interview with one of the creators of the first TMNT movie and some of their comics. So it was either Kevin Eastman or Brian Laird. Eastman and Laird are the two guys that made up Ninja Turtles. Anyway, also, hey Paradox Moose, good to see you. Ethelbald, who's this guy? Well, he's the King of Mercia. Why is he a big deal though? He's one of the first Mercian kings that we have on record and we can prove started beating up the other kingdoms. Specifically, he starts by beating up Kent and Wessex. So if we're looking at the map, that is this region right here and this region right here. Had to remodel. The old owner painted the entire mastering back. No. A pink in a bathroom? No. Made up? You mean it's not a documentary? No, I wish it were, though. If there were Ninja Turtles living in the sewers of New York, that'd be really friggin' cool, and I'd love to go hang out with them, because I think we would get along. But it's not. How do you know he's the king? Because he's beating up the other kingdoms. Right. He's also not covered in poop. But that's... I told myself I wasn't going to spend this entire stream making Monty Python references. That was the first one that I let slip out, though. Anyway, so we know that he starts beating up Kent and Wessex, and we know that he's taking over places because we have these charters. And what am I talking about as a charter? Well, we actually have this thing right here, which we can look at. This is one of the charters that he wrote. So this is a really bad photocopy of the actual document itself. I tried to find a picture of the actual document that would have been the original piece of... this would have been written on vellum. The Magna Charter. It is a charter. It is not the first charter. But what we see here is... this is all in Latin, by the way. I, Ethelbert, donate this land to... this is a donation. This is called the Izmir Diploma. And basically what this is the king, Ethelbald, giving land to the Catholic Church for them to make a church in Kent. Now, if he were not dominating Kent, how could he give away the territory? And the answer is he couldn't, because you can't give away land that you don't own. So what we see from these particular charters is that we have a kingdom of Mercia that is expanding. And he is going... so here he is again right here, Aethelbald Rex. So he is the king, Aethelbald. So he's expanding. He's taking more territory. He's controlling this territory in such a way to be able to give it to the church. Isn't it true that the current royal family is actually Transylvanian? Well, okay, so here's the thing. The current royal family is German. They're the House of Hanover, but they're really, they call themselves the House of Windsor, but they're really the House of Hanover, and they changed their name to avoid the connection with the Germans when the Germans were doing all that crazy stuff. The thing about all of the royal families in in Europe, is that they are all related. You can't really find any royal family in England that is not somehow related to another family in Europe. They're all going to be related to everybody, because here's the thing. There are only so many nobles to go around. And when you only have so many nobles to go around, and especially when you're the royal family, you do not marry down. You have to marry somebody that is also in the royal family. So the family tree of European nobility is more like a family hedge, because it doesn't go up very much, but oh boy does it go out. And there's a lot of this kind of back and forth marrying your cousin, marrying that guy who's also married to this other guy. So is Prince Philip related to Vlad the Impaler? I don't know that for sure. But it would not surprise me if he were. But I don't think we have a whole bunch of reputable source work for what happened to Vlad's family after about 2 generations after him. So who knows? Who knows? 6 degrees to Vlad, indeed. Swedish royal family is originally French, right? And for a while, the ruling family in England was Dutch, because why not? We kicked out the king. We needed a cousin. Bring in the Dutch. This is William and Mary of Orange. They were Dutch, and technically they're French too, but that's a whole other story. It's just they're all like this. Like at the beginning of World War One, Tsar Nicholas. So I'll just say it this way: the guy that was running England and the guy that was running France and the guy that was running Russia were all cousins. They're all first cousins. I'm sorry, the guy that was running Germany. So German Chancellor, King of England, Russian Tsar, they're first cousins, and they grew up together because their grandmother was Queen Victoria. And they're in 3 different countries. It's just they're all tied in together like that. 6 degrees of impolation. I follow the same logic. I'll not marry my own wife. Must be at least a hairdresser. Oh. Habsburg family tree is fun. Oh my gosh, the Habsburgs. Good gracious. Dude, the Habsburg family tree is a mess. Queen Victoria was the grand... Yeah, so right there. Cave Geek, hey, what's up? And I can pretend I haven't started streaming yet because you're live. There we go. Not because of the 4-hour nap you just woke up from. Alas. World War I was a big old mess. It's a big old mess. Go follow Nixalotl, who does cool artwork. I saw Nixa come in earlier. She did that really cool emote for me. Also, go follow Cave Geek, who is an artist that makes traditional art, also plays games. This piece of art right here, this wonderful map of Numenor, is Cave Geek. And you should go to his store and buy all of his art. Anyway, so Ethelbald, we know that he's expanding. Cool stuff. He's going to start taking cities from other kingdoms like London and Middlesex. These were cities that were normally or previously in the Kingdom of Essex. He's going to take them, and we know that because we have him approving of bishops that are in Middlesex and London. You don't get to do that unless you're the king that has these things. We know that he and Northumbria do not really get along very well because we have multiple issues where they're going to fight. And if we read a certain particular translation or interpretation rather of information from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles and from Venerable Bede, it seems like Ethelbald might have also successfully been able to get the Picts, a group of people that lived up in the northern part of what is modern-day Scotland, to attack Northumbria as a way to sort of draw their armies up north, because there's this concerted effort where the Picts attack from the north and Northumbria has to send their army up to fight them. And then Ethelbald shows up in the southern part of Northumbria and burns York to the ground. So anyway, this is a big upswing in Mercian power. This is a pretty big deal. He is one of the more powerful kings of the time period, and this is sort of going to start the really big trajectory of Mercia on the way up. Are there any diseases that run in Europe royalty because of their family twig? That's a great question, and I don't think so. I don't think that they're particularly prone to any disease. They they're not necessarily inbred to the point that they're going to start having a whole bunch of genetic abnormality. Especially in the last few generations, they've married far enough outside of their cousin realm that the modern younger British nobles aren't nearly as inbred as they were if we were to go back even 200 years into the early 1800s. So lately, probably not. The Ulster Loyalists, who are loyal to the German English royal family, idolize Dutch King William of Orange. Where's Orange? France. Why did they? What did they vote for Brexit? If you're looking for logic in that world, Vipers, I think you might be really upset at what you find. Archduke Franz Ferdinand dodged so many ridiculous assassinations. Yeah, even on the day that he finally got assassinated, he dodged a couple of assassinations, um, including a hand grenade that didn't blow up like it was supposed to, and somebody who missed the parade because they were sleeping. Strike first, strike hard, show no mercy. Well, you can't win all of it. And like you can't win all of it, Ethelbald, even though he's a super powerful king, ends up getting assassinated by his own bodyguard. Now, why did he get assassinated? We don't know. There's not really a lot of good information about that. But he got killed. So he dies. Now, there's a very short rule of less than a year by one of his sons, but his son gets run off the throne after less than a year, and we end up with this guy named Offa, which is where we get Off of My Cloud. I hope everybody gets the British connection with that. But let me just say that there is a British connection with that. Jimmy? No, Offa. Not Jimmy Offa, just Offa. That's also Hoffa, but I get the joke. I have to explain it. If you don't explain the joke, it's not funny. Who is Offa? Well, this guy. And first off, if you've been hanging around the stream, and especially the last few episodes of Adventures in History, you'll know that there have been some pretty rough looking coins, right? Like if you look at the French coinage from this period of time, they are highly sketchy looking. And if you look at the Visigoth coins that we looked at last week, they are real sketchy looking and they barely even look like humans. Look at this guy. And this is even one of his better coins. This is his best coin. Like, look at this guy. Offa Rex? How cool is that? This looks like a human being on a coin. That's kind of crazy. Accurate portrait, right? It looks, it's legal tender, mate. Indeed, right? I don't know why I said mate like, or that was like Australian. I don't know why. But anyway, yeah, this guy is kind of a big deal. And he's going to be, to add Rex, well, he's the king. He's the king, right? He is the king of Mercia. Rank 3 things: Stone Age, Modern Era, Medieval Era. What are the criteria? Like how much I want to study them, or when I want to live, or who had the most communicable diseases? I don't know. Like what's the live in? I would rather live in the modern era than the medieval era than the Stone Age. That's an easy one. That's a question that historians get all the time, and I can promise you that we live at the best time that humans have ever lived. If you told me, hey, you could go back and live in the Stone Age, no, I don't want to live in the Stone Age. You friggin' get a cut on your leg and you die, right? Because sepsis will kill you. There's no such thing as law. Anybody that wants to can just like run around and beat you with a club. I am adventurous. I also really enjoy electricity. I like the internet. I like antibiotics, and I like being able to go to the store and buy something that gets rid of a headache, right? No, I don't want to be stoned to death. No, I don't. All right, let me catch up. All hail Shane Rex. No, I am not even close enough to calling myself like Duke. I remember that in medieval times, Britain was still a part of Europe. It's still part of Europe now, Colmart. But I get what you're joking for. Good to see you. How's it going? Hope you're having a good one. Imagine telling a guy to make you look good or die, and that's the best he can imagine you looking. Well, I mean, again, compare this to coins that were going on in the Merovingian world, or coins that were going on in Visigoth world. These are head and shoulders above all of that stuff. Speaking of coins, you got to brag. I've gotten to hold an ancient Roman coin among other Oh, look at there! A Caesar coin is really cool, Metran. That is a brag, and I appreciate the brag. The closest that I have to that, I do have a coin from King Aretas IV, who was a king of the Nabateans. He was in the 2nd century. I have a coin from the first Jewish revolt, which is closer to Caesar. That's 67 to 73. But that's the oldest one that I have. One of my professors has a coin of Augustus that I've held. But I've not had one back that far. That's a good brag. When royals interbreed, is it because they... Oh, that's good. I like the internet and indoor plumbing. I do too. We all love the internet, and we know what the internet is for. Cat pictures, clearly. Medieval over stone, though? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely medieval over stone. For real. Even in the medieval world, you have a much more broad concept. Well, I mean, I guess it depends where you are geographically in the medieval world. But just broadly speaking, the medieval world is way more stable than the Stone Age was. No gunplay in the Stone Age. Also, hey Nintendo, what's going on? Hope you're having a good one. No gunplay in the Stone Age, that's true. Cat videos, yep, cat videos. And I don't really like cats, not particularly, no. Ann is off for the night. Ann, good to see you. Hope you're having a good one, and enjoy the rest of your night. Have a great evening, and get on with it. Okay, I'm getting on with it. Offa, very powerful king, does a lot of cool stuff. He is the most powerful of the Mercian kings to date. How do we know this? Well, he does a lot of stuff. First off, he's got a big old country. Well, I mean, it's not like the world's biggest country, but he's got this. By the time that he's done ruling, he controls everything in green, which is the largest kingdom on the island of Britain that had been put together since Rome left. And this is almost all of the kingdoms. So if we look at Kent and Essex and Sussex and East Anglia and Wessex, he's united a lot of this stuff. I thought Shane was going to say, get all philosophical and say that the Stone Age to see the discovery of fire and tools. Well, see, that happened, the Stone Age is really, really long, right? So if I was going to live in the Stone Age, I would want to live in the Neolithic, which is potentially 1 million years before the advent of hominins using fire. So even he doesn't like whales. Yeah, so you see that he literally separated his country from the Welsh. He pushed a lot of Celtic people that had sort of, I don't know if you can really see the geographic stuff, but they're right around here. There used to be quite a few sort of other Celtic kingdoms that he pushed out or consolidated. And then he built this big thing right here called Offa's Dyke, which is basically just a big old ditch that separated his kingdom from Wales. And I have a picture of it. Check that junk out. Now, this is by itself interesting because it takes a lot of hours of labor to build a literal ditch that's 30 foot deep that goes all the way across the boundary between your country and my country. You first read it as Merca. I see that and I understand that. Merca. I think the earliest we got to see and hold was dated to around 260 BC. Oh man, that's cool. I am jealous, Metrand. I am jealous. Um, the grass is very green. It is indeed. Easier to make it a new country than to learn to read it. Junk Collector, that is accurate. The Welsh language is a very difficult one to read. It's got a lot of consonants in it. Viper says that he'd want to keep away from the Welsh too. You dig a hole, I build a wall. Like really green. I mean, it's the heath, right? My country, yeah, my side of the country, your side of the country, exactly. But again, this stretches all the way across this whole territory. So again, how many hours of labor did it take to build that giant ditch all the way across this region? And how do you do that if you don't have a whole bunch of centralized authority where you can command people to go out to dig the ditch? Because again, you're not doing this out of the goodness of your heart. I mean, there might be a handful of people that are like, oh man, I really love King Offa and I'm going to do whatever he says. You know, like you have some really big like fanboys that are going to go out and dig the ditch if Offa says dig the ditch. But most people aren't going to be really interested in digging a giant ditch. So a lot of these people had to be paid, and a lot of these people were slave labor, some of it, especially from people that had been conquered and they're going to get relocated if they're causing trouble. Because he doesn't rule peacefully all the time. There are lots of little rebellions that kind of pop up around the area. And it's pretty clear that even Offa is not the only king ruling in his territory, because there are a lot of other people that are using the title king that are sort of sub-kings. Some people just like to dig. Maybe so. That's true. Tell them you hid some treasure somewhere along it, right? Men just love to dig holes. I mean, it's kind of cool, but remember, it's a big old thing. Like you dig for 3 or 4 days and then you're probably tired of it. And, you know, can you dig it? That's great. I get that reference. You create the ditch challenge on TikTok and teens dig it to... There you go, Cave. That's exactly how you do it. The psychological effect on the country, even beyond those physically dug the ditch, must have been incredible. Right? You know, like I'm Spartacus. Vern. We're still having this double Spartaci. Vern, my friend, so good to see you. Thank you so much for that subscription. I hope you're doing well. And I know that you're probably super tired right now because holiday season and retail, and I feel the heart going out to you. I hope you're doing well, my friend. I really, really do. It's really good to see you. If they dug it deep enough, they could have created another British Isle, right? Just dig a ditch deep enough that they just, you fill it up with water. Missed an opportunity. And did volunteer work today because Vern is that good of a person. Works retail in the holiday season and still takes time to do volunteer work because Vern is just that cool. Just that cool. Man, we can all hope one day to be as cool as Vern is. Lots of stuff going on in Offa. He is going to take over Essex and put a new king on the throne that is sort of under his control. He's going to choose the King of Kent. He's going to issue coins in Wessex. He's going to issue charters in both Wessex and Sussex. He's going to mint coins in East Anglia. He's going to fight with Northumbria, but he doesn't actually take them over, but he does force them into a particular situation where they have to intermarry with his family, and that gives him some leverage over what's going on. But what's really among the most important things that happens right here, Offa is going to start up political conversations with European continental powers, specifically with Charlemagne. We have not seen, historically speaking, British rulers talking with continental European rulers at this point when he takes over for almost 400 years. And this is why it's such a big deal that we start talking about England again, because in this 8th century, they're going to get back on the map. And they're going to start playing into the larger game of things. We could have probably had a couple of streams where we tried to pick through and sift through some of the details of what was going on in the 500s and 600s, but they would have been very, very scant, and they would have been highly speculative. And I think you all know that I don't like really doing a whole bunch of speculative history stuff. It's not really my thing. If I don't know it, I don't like to talk about it, right? I'm gonna fight you till you marry my family, right? Rank 3 things. Worst ways to die. Iron Maiden, crucifixion, mauled by lions. I would probably take mauled by lions first, then Iron Maiden, then crucifixion. Because I think that is fastest to slowest death. I think. Getting killed by a lion is probably going to be pretty fast. They're probably going to, rip your throat out and you're going to bleed out in just a couple minutes. The Iron Maiden thing, you're going to, it's going to be a similar kind of thing. If you're, and by the way, Iron Maidens are probably not actually used in history. They're probably modern appurtenances. But if you're getting stabbed a bajillion times and you're bleeding out, you're going to probably bleed out within just a few minutes. Crucifixion can last days, right? If you get crucified, you can literally last days on the cross. And that sucks. That sucks real bad, right? You do not want to get crucified. This is why crucifixion was held for the worst of Roman perpetrators. And one of the benefits of Roman citizenship, if you were a Roman citizen, you could not get crucified, legally speaking. And that was one of the benefits. Like, hey, if they're going to kill me, at least they're going to chop my head off and get it done with, right? I'm not going to sit up on a cross for 3 or 4 days. Messy stuff. Pet a kitty, get a hug, or hang around. Aaronus. Or is this Aaron US? I don't know which one it is. Welcome in. And yeah, you did come in during an interesting conversation. So I have a point redemption where you can rank 3 things. And Chad Guy in the chat asked for worst ways to die. And he gave me Iron Maiden, crucifixion, and mauled by lions. So I had to do it. That was the that was the redemption. But welcome in. I hope you're having a great day. Please feel free to communicate in the chat however much you want to. We're really laid back here. Have a good time. Talk about history stuff. Nothing's really off limits as long as we're all being adults. And I've never had to ban anybody yet, so I think we'll be okay. They did make rock and music. Iron Maiden made some good stuff. If you're a stranger in a strange land and you don't want to die by Iron Maiden, you better be quick or be dead. Dun, 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 dun. Could you lose your Roman citizenship? That's an interesting question. Technically, no. But there are some weird instances. The dog is losing her mind right now. There are a few instances where it looks like emperors, by whim, punished some people in ways that they shouldn't if they were Roman citizens. Does this mean that they had their citizenship revoked? Or was this just sort of the flight of fancy of an emperor who could literally do whatever they wanted to? Probably the latter. You could get exiled from Rome and lose all of your property and not be allowed back in. that was about as close as you could come, and that was the worst version of Roman exile, which is called it was referred to as being banned from fire and water, which literally means that no one in Rome could help you, and you could get no assistance from anybody within the boundaries of the Roman Empire. It was the bad stuff, right? You could be relegated, which is sort of a temporary thing where you get kicked out and you can't come back in until your time is done. But you don't want to get like damnatio aqua, you know, the ban from fire and water. Anyway, and if so, could you lose it to no? There aren't a lot of instances where we have historical record of Roman citizens being crucified. I can't think of any off the top of my head. There might be one or two. Aaronus. Okay, cool. Welcome in. Iron Maiden still makes good music. I haven't heard any of their new stuff. Love history. Oh, well, you're in the right place. Click the follow button. You get to hear the Indiana Jones theme song. Go to the mall, listen to Iron Maiden, get crucified by Pierce. There we go. Yeah, did you all hear the borking? The borkening was totally a big deal. I think ancient Roman citizens didn't get the death penalty for murder if you're a higher status. Okay, so you could get the death penalty regardless of what class you were. It won't let you redeem get on with it, really? I don't know why. It should let you redeem that as many times as you want to. There are good questions, though. The way that Roman courts worked were interesting, and when you went to court, the magistrate that was hearing your court case had to basically set the conditions of the court case, and the way that they set these conditions were very, very specific. Like the court magistrate might say, okay, you have to prove that this person murdered this person with this knife, right? And that was the prescription. And if you had a really, really good lawyer, they could argue that there was no way that you murdered that person with that knife and get you off for murder, right? Like, you might have murdered that dude to death, but you killed him with a stick. And because the judge set the thing that says you killed this person with this knife, you go, well, you know, there you go. The court case is solved. I didn't kill him with a knife. I killed him with a stick. My lawyer proved that. I'm free. You know. I want to hear it, but you followed after you rated us, and okay, I hear you. That's fine. Let me manually trigger it for you. How about that? I'm pretty sure I can still do that. Alert box. There we go. That was for you, Aaronus. There you go. And the most awesome whip gif ever. I'm sort of wondering why you can't redeem get on with it. That's interesting, and I don't like that. Murdered to death. Indeed. Anyway. Offa, big deal. Really big deal. Has deal with Charlemagne, intermarries with Charlemagne's family, sends a daughter over to marry one of Charlemagne's kids. They're going to sort of team up to try to wrangle some stuff going on with the church. Charlemagne has a lot of stuff that he kind of wants to get done in the church. If you'll remember, Charlemagne and the Pope had a very interesting relationship. And he gets Offa to kind of side with him as, hey, look, we've got two kings against the Pope. Does that make, does two kings make one Pope? And kind of stuff like that. Interesting kind of stuff. Looks like you only get one get on with it per stream. Really? That doesn't seem right. I should fix that. I'll change that. I just realized how to defeat Warlord Shane in the post-apocalypse. He raises his warhammer above his head, just about to crush your skull. How do Romans remove graffiti? That's an interesting question. The difference is, in the post-apocalyptic world, I'm not really going to be interested in rebuilding society. I'm going to be out to, well, I might rebuild society in my image. testing the enemies under heel are not really my thing, and I'm probably not going to deal with that very well. I worry about what would happen if I was in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. I really do. But anyway, that's a whole other situation. Now, one more thing that happens right at the end of Offa's reign, and it doesn't happen in Mercia. It actually happens up in Northumbria. But something really important happens. And at a place in Northumbria, at a place called Lindisfarne, there is a big Viking raid. And specifically at this place, which is Lindisfarne Abbey. This is, yes, in 793, correct. By the way, Offa is king until 796. So Lindisfarne, this is Lindisfarne Abbey. You can see it's right here on the coastline. This is the target of a Viking raid. Now, why is that such a big deal? Oh boy, is this such a big deal. If you read the ancient sources that discuss the raid at Lindisfarne, it sounds like the end of the friggin' world. There are literally these reports of whirlwinds and storms that suck the water out of the bay, and dragons flying around in the sky breathing fire, and lightning strikes that destroy entire buildings. It is seen as an absolutely cataclysmic event. Why though? Well, the Vikings are going to land on the beach right down there that you see, and they're going to attack the priory, because there's a whole bunch of monks at this particular location, and they're going to take these monks off into slavery, and they're going to sack the church and kill a whole bunch of people. This was bad. This was an attack not just on Christians, but on God himself by heathens. By the way, getting back to something that I mentioned earlier, the word heathen means someone who lives in the heath, or rural person. So if you ever wondered why heathen was considered pagan, again, it's because the rural people didn't convert to Christianity quickly. It took a long time for those rural people to convert to Christianity. They kept their heathen ways. That's where it comes from. Just like pagan, the word pagan was originally Latin for rural farm person. Like paganus is a guy that farms out in the middle of nowhere, right? Same concept. All of our words, or not all of our words, but a lot of our words that talk about bad people are literally just like those people that are rural that don't like Christian stuff. So barbarian was an onomatopoeia making fun of the way that they spoke. Not necessarily an insult to their particular religious ideology. Just like how New Yorkers use someone from Kansas, alas. Perhaps so. I don't know specifically. I would bet that there's probably somebody in any state that would call anybody from another state that, just because of the law of big numbers. But anyway, Lindisfarne is a big deal. There's a Viking raid. By the way, it's up here in the wrong button. The northern part of England in the Kingdom of Northumbria. It's right about here. And these people are coming from right over here, right? So they're sailing across the North Sea, they're landing here, and they're raiding. And this is going to start something that is going to be a topic that we cover next phase. But the rise in Nordic expansion and raiding is going to be a constant threat for the kingdoms in England during the 800s, or the 9th century. So, have I seen old New Yorker map of the U.S.? I haven't, but I would be interested in looking at. Everybody go follow Noger. He reads philosophy papers on stream and breaks them down into words that even people like me can understand. And he is very polite in telling me when I'm stuck in my own little corner of academia and trying to make everything in philosophy act like history and sociology, which is one of my worst things. Like, man, why is that person doing that in that paper? And Noger's like, because that's the way we write philosophy papers. And I'm like, if I did that in history, I'd be like laughed out of the room. How long before they started to fortify the religious treasures in England? Not too much longer after this symmetry. It does not take very long at all for them to sort of abandon the coastline or put their churches or their monasteries out on really high, rugged islands or up in the mountains. They bug out pretty quick. Lumpy also, have a good night, man. Hope you're having a good one. And congratulations on getting your stuff done. One more day to the weekend. Earn yourself some chocolate and have a good night. 2 hours and no one mentioned the Knights Who Say Knee. Vipers, I was trying really, really hard to not make Monty Python jokes, because if I started the Monty Python jokes, forever would they dominate the stream. But that's where we're going to end tonight. We get a little taste of Vikings, and then we're going to have to stop, because that's the end of the century, right? And that's what we do. We're supposed to be looking at this century by century. So there we go. But as always, we don't have to just bug out just because I'm done. If you have any questions or if you want to redeem any channel points or anything like that, now would be a great time to do so. Any talk of Beowulf? We haven't talked about Beowulf yet, but that period of time is getting pretty close. The epic tale or poem of Beowulf is an Anglo-Saxon situation, and it takes place around this period of time. Well, it's set around this period of time where you had a slow conversion of local traditional polytheistic religion more to Christianity. Now that happens a lot differently over in this region. So Beowulf is set over here. The Danes and the Geats. That is all, Denmark and Sweden. So that's happening over here, and it's happening a little bit later, chronologically speaking. But they do end up over here, and we do end up with that story being recorded by people in England later on. Glad to have been able to catch Metran. It was really good to see you. What's in the news? Oh man, lots of stuff. Lots of stuff. Holy moly. Okay, I've changed Get On With It so that everybody can do it as many times as they want to. There's so much stuff happening in the news. It's kind of hard to pick one, right? We talked about Peru last time, so I shouldn't talk about Peru again, even though I kind of want to. What's going on anywhere else, though? I have heard about the fusion stuff. Positive energy reaction from fusion is interesting. I still don't think it's going to be... It's the first step in a very long process that is going to be potentially positive in the future, right? We can't get super excited about fusion energy right now, though, because it was very small net and took a whole bunch of input to get there. Let's talk about India and China. That's a news thing that I don't think people pay attention to or know anything about. So over here in the region right here, so this is part of the Himalayan mountain range, but right here, let me turn on the borders. India and China share a border. And this particular region right here is going to turn red in just a second when we get a little bit closer. This is the Arunachal Pradesh, the province of Arunachal. And it is disputed. You can see here that all of these boundaries are red because China and India both claim this territory. And back in 2020, there was a pretty big live fire argument going on between China and India where some people died and they went on like DEFCON 20 and everybody was like in really, really edgy battle scenarios and people were moving troops around. Well, earlier this week, there were incursions, and India, the troops in the region say that China had decided basically to move in and had sent people across the border into this region that India claims to control. China claims to control it as well. Uh, and it ended up in another live fire situation where India and China exchanged gunfire between military units. And nobody died, but there were some injuries from it. Uh, this is, it seems like it's a minor thing, but this is part of a larger Chinese movement of expanding their sphere of influence, and it's not a good thing. It just really isn't. Um, but the stuff that's going on right over here in Arunachal province is troubling, and it's not necessarily going to break us out in like World War III, but this is a place where China is going to try to push its luck as much as possible because India is in a really weird situation where India needs the Chinese market because India exports a lot of stuff to China and India gets a lot of stuff from China. And this is sort of, again, the upside and downside of buying cheap Chinese goods. Uh, it brings you into this weird lying down with the dogs and getting up with the fleas situation kind of stuff. Neighbors with nukes, yeah, that's troublesome as it is. Both of these countries are nuclear powers, and neither of them particularly care for each other. At some point, paganism has ruled witchcraft, and then witchcraft stays illegal until sometime in the 1900s. Well, we'd have to get into exactly what the definitions of paganism and witchcraft are. They're used differently at different times in history, and sometimes they're used interchangeably, and other times they're not. It's a weird issue. Witchcraft itself is a very, very broad topic that isn't easy to sort of codify or explain in a compartmentalized way. It bleeds over into a lot of stuff. Like, is wearing a cross necklace witchcraft? Some Christians would say no, that's not. Wearing a cross necklace is a perfectly good Christian thing to do. But if you look at how a lot of people in the ancient Christian world described things, like you're not supposed to wear totem items around your neck. And this was specifically targeted at things like religious symbols on necklaces. It's a weird bleed over situation that is very, very complex and hard to get at without lots of specific references. I guess it doesn't help that both of these countries are in the running to be the next big economic powerhouse. That's part of it. That's part of the situation that gets wrapped up in the middle of it, right? So that's what's in the news. And because I want to talk about it, because I mentioned it, I'll give you a bonus one. Peru had 2 coups in a day yesterday and appointed a new president who was the vice president. So this is Peru. And today, the new president of Peru passed a whole bunch of resolutions, sort of unilaterally, that put Peru under basically police rule, shut down the right of assembly, and shut down the right of privacy, which means that the police in Peru can now enter your home without a warrant for whatever reason they want to, and also put a whole bunch of things in place to basically give the president power to kind of keep Peru in this state for as long as she wants to. That's also very troubling. That's going on in Peru as we speak. Kind of messy. Also, one of the high ranking members of the European Union was taking bribes from Qatar and is currently kicked out. And they're going to try to strip. Her name was Kylie, Eva Kylie, and was pretty high up in the EU and was taking bribes from Qatar, and they're going to try to strip her of her political immunity so that they can try her in criminal court, because they're going to really try to nail her to the wall for that. I had a nap through most of yesterday. This is big news that I've completely missed. Well, no, Metran, don't worry about that. That's kind of what, like, that's what I do. I read everything. Don't give up your freedoms for perceived safety. Yeah. Well, the issue here is the president did this unilaterally with the support of the very highly militarized police in Peru. So it's not like the average person even had a say-so in this. They were just told, you're under police control now, and you can't go out in public and protest. Yeah. Drama llama ding dong. Indeed. It's a lot of crazy stuff. But anyway, that's what's going on in the news. Unfortunately, it's not necessarily good stuff. But I don't know. We should maybe have two different ones, like what's in the news and then what's in the news good. Or some people just like actually specify, like, what's in the news, just say something good. I've seen that one before. Just tell me some good news. Kitten videos, right? Just play a kitten video. Say something that sounds like Donald Trump's accent, or read something like Smeagol. I don't know, just as a laugh. Let's see who we're going to go raid. Breaking news. Kittens are cute. They do tend to be cute until I have to deal with them. I don't really care for cats that much. It's not really my thing. Part of that is because all cats are the devil. Pre-orders Rose Gundam is on now. Oh, I didn't even know that it was out. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get one then. Alas. The news is never good. If I recall correctly, there was a paper reporting only good news, and they folded in less than a year. No, there are several websites that I actually frequent to read good news. I just don't ever share it because I feel like, I don't know, like it's kind of my job to be the bearer of bad news, because when I say stuff, I can then explain it and it doesn't end up being like super politicized or biased. I take my reporting of events fairly responsibly, and I just try to say, here's what's going on. All right. Well, I think that it is time for us to raid. It is one of the many qualities I appreciate you in here. Oh, well, thank you, Viscera. I try not to talk out of my butt, and I try to make it really clear when I'm sharing my opinion, and I try to just call it like it is, because that's just kind of the way that I view it. Like, that's the way that I want it given to me, and that's the way I like giving it to other people. Your lecture about Ukraine was fantastic. Oh, thank you very much. I'm still pretty proud of how that went. And that still remains one of my most widely watched VODs. So much good news is stuff like child raises money to erase other students' debt. Yeah, I mean, I see that. Peru right now, please, this is supposed to not be a happy occasion. Let's not bicker and argue Hoover killed. Yeah, pretty much. Thanks for the stream. Time to get some sleep. Metriant, have a good one. I am going to stream during winter break. I still plan on doing that. Maybe not every single day, but I'll do my best to stream as much as I can. I plan on having 2 streams next week. I plan on doing our viewer request stream on Celtic Druids on Tuesday. And then I haven't quite figured out if I'm going to stream on Thursday to do another adventure in history. I think I might. It's really going to depend on how I feel. And if anything, I might actually not feel like it on Tuesday because we've got to do a lot of work around the house this weekend. So I might still be tired. I don't know. We'll see. Just keep an eyeball on Discord and I'll keep everybody updated as much as I can. Okay, so we're going to go do a raid. And we're going to see who to raid. And I think we're going to go raid my buddy, a great artist named Cryomera. Remember self-care. Absolutely, Vern. And I hope that you can find some time in your world to take care of yourself as well. Man, it's really good to see you. I hope you're doing well. We're going to go see Cryomera, who is, and I'm not joking here, one of the reasons why I'm still on Twitch in the first place, because was one of the first people to encourage me to stream and one of the first big streamers to bring audiences to me. Was the first raid that I ever received and has been a consistent supporter of the stream. No, it was not me. It was Nick Solotl who requested Celtic Druid stream. So we're going to... And also just really good art. Yeah, again, Cryomere is an amazing artist who is just bonkers cool. And met her in person and is just as genuine and amazing in person as on stream. So we're going to go see Cryomera yell adventure when we get in and type adventure. Don't just yell it out because I don't think they can hear you through the internet that way. And if you have those lovely adventure hat emotes, throw that in the chat. And I'm going to hope to try to stream over the weekend. It's going to be really, really busy around here. But just keep an eyeball on Discord. And as soon as I can figure out what's going on, I'll try to make sure that everybody knows. Thanks for the subscriptions tonight. Thanks for the support and the conversation. Lots of good chat tonight. Really pleased with how this went. Sometimes I kind of worry about stuff, but you know, it's good to know that we're out there and we're all doing our thing. Really big crowd tonight, so thank you all for hanging out and spending your time with a weirdo that talks about history. But until then, have a good one, and see you next time. So, bye everybody.